Okay, so in continuation with the previous class on the endocrinological system in our body, the chemical control and coordination or integration, as the new name says. So in the previous section, we have talked about the definition of hormone. We have tried to understand what a hormone means. How can we classify hormones based on their structure, based on their site of action? And then we try to understand at a very basic level that what is the function of, or basically the what is the mechanism of hormones, right? So far, these are the things that we have tried to understand. So now jumping on to the major portion from which questions are regularly asked in the examination, that is the function of these hormones, their location, and what diseases can occur based on the levels of these hormone, be it higher than normal, be it lower than normal. Nowadays, problems due to decrement or increment in the level of hormone is very common in our country and different countries for that matter. So let us try to have a basic understanding of these hormones. So when I talked about this endocrinological system, so let us try to figure out where are these organs located, right? So in general, we know most of the significant organs in our body, but these hormones up till now, these organs which secrete the hormone up till now are not very familiar to you. So let us try to have some idea where these hormones are located and these organs are located which secrete these hormones, and then we'll dive deeper into their functioning, right? So you can see this diagram. This has been taken directly from your NCERT, because diagrams, images from NCERT is what we have to do, nothing more, nothing less. Every year they give 2, 3, 4, maybe 5 images, and then they can simply ask you which organ is this, what is its function, what are the hormones secreted by these organ, right? So these kind of things. So starting from the head, in the brain. So when I was talking about the brain, I had extensively talked about the location of these glands which secrete certain hormones. The first is hypothalamus, that you can see it is located in this part. Then we have just below the hypothalamus is the pituitary gland, and the third eye that we call is the pineal gland, right? So pineal gland is just behind this, so it is often called as the third eye. Then we have this thyroid gland, right? These are our thyroid gland just in front of our this larynx, right? The voice box, in front of it is our thyroid gland. If you have been to a doctor, you must have seen that he often palpates, touches it, tries to move it, and try to assess the size and functioning of this gland. So these are the thyroid glands, right? So these thyroid gland, in these thyroid glands only, there are presence of 4 parathyroid gland. They are kind of embedded in these glands, right? So parathyroid gland is just you can say embedded in the thyroid gland. Then we have another gland that is called the thymus gland, right? So its size increases till we attain puberty, right? After that, the size of this thymus gland keeps on decreasing, and by the time person reaches the old age, there is just a remnant of it which is there, right? So then we have the pancreas. Nowadays, diabetes, right? A very common illness that people suffer from, and it is a very long lasting chronic illness. Lots of problem gets caused because of this problem in this pancreas, which we will study later, right? So it is a very important gland. Like I said, that it has both endocrine as well as exocrine function, right? In endocrine, it secretes insulin and glucagon, which help in the maintenance of our blood glucose level. While at exocrine level, there are lots of digestive hormones which are secreted by the pancreas, which we will study when we will study the digestive system, right? Then we have this adrenal gland. These are our kidneys, right? And just above the kidneys, there are glands called the adrenal gland. Renal stands for kidney, and just above it is the adrenal gland. And these glands, we will divide it into different parts, and then we'll study the number of hormones which are secreted by it, and their functions are very significant like most of the other hormones. Then we have these gonads, right? Like this ovary in case of female, right? Two ovaries, and these two testes in case of males. So this is the basic location of different glands which secrete different hormones. And as we will move further, we'll be studying more about their functions. We'll be studying lots of good things and bad things related to the increment or decrement in their concentration in our body, right? So let us first of all start with the hypothalamus. So it is, you can say that anatomically it is the gland which is present above all the endocrine glands. So we'll be starting with the hypothalamus, right? So the location of hypothalamus, like it is something that used to be, in our tips, because this has often been asked in the examination. So in the basal part of the diencephalon, right? If you want to know more about this, you can refer to the previous videos that I have made on central nervous system, where I have talked about the parts of the thalamus and diencephalon. So you can have an idea about the location of this hypothalamus gland, right? Now this gland has certain neurons, nuclei, and neurosecretory cells. What are these? Neurons, of course, you know what neurons are. Neurons are the nerve cells, right? Then we have this nuclei. What are nuclei? Nuclei are basically a group of nuclear, or we can say group of cell bodies, right? Cell bodies of neuron. So a group of neurons, their cell bodies united together to form the nuclei and neurosecretory cells, right? There are cells, neuronal cells, which are secretory in nature. So it is composed of these kind of cells. Now there is a diagram given in your NCERT, and I want you to focus very deeply on that diagram, because that is a very significant diagram, and I have drawn just a very simplified diagram from that so that you can understand it, right? So this upper part that right now I'm telling you is our hypothalamus, right? Hypothalamus, right? This is the hypothalamus, and below this hypothalamus, this part which I'm let me use a highlighter probably so that we can understand it better, right? This part which I'm trying to highlight right now is our pituitary. So we can say that if this is the hypothalamus, pituitary gland are just hanging from it like a stalk, right? So pituitary gland is just below the hypothalamus, and the pituitary can be divided into two parts. Why I'm talking about pituitary? Because hypothalamus and pituitary anatomically, when we study them together, it gives a very good understanding of the location as well as the function of these two glands. So like I have drawn, right? This is one part and this is another part. This part is anterior, right? Anterior is something forward, and this part is posterior. So there are two parts. One is anterior, means forward, and posterior, which means backward, right? So this is the two part of the pituitary. And to make things more understanding, let us see what I have drawn. I have drawn a nuclei. I told you what a nuclei is, and I have told you, now I am telling you an important name, arcuate nuclei. So if you want to keep it in mind, well and good. If you don't, this is not going to be asked in your examination. So there is a nuclei, right? And it has certain neurosecretory cells. It means these are neuronal cells which will secrete something. And I have written something else here. What I have written is IH and RH. What does it mean is that, okay, maybe I should be writing it here. IH and RH. Inhibiting hormone and releasing hormone, right? So hypothalamus is the boss, right? It has got hormones which will control the which will control the secretion of pituitary gland, right? The anterior pituitary is entirely under the governance of hypothalamus via the hormones secreted by these neurosecretory cells. And these hormones can be inhibitory hormone, which will inhibit the function of pituitary hormones, or which will inhibit the function of pituitary, means that pituitary won't be releasing its hormones, or releasing hormone which will ask the pituitary to release the hormone, right? So this part of hypothalamus is controlling the anterior pituitary, right? Now a very peculiar thing that you should be seeing, I have drawn a diagram. I have made an artery, right? So here is an artery that is going. The neurosecretory cells are pouring their secretion, inhibitory and releasing hormone into this artery, and then this artery is going down all the way up till the anterior pituitary, where these hormones are being released in the anterior pituitary. And this particular thing, I'm calling it as a portal system, right? So hypophyseal portal system is what we call. There are multiple places in our body where there is portal system, but for that we have to understand what a portal system is, right? So generally what happens is that, let us say this is our heart, okay, like the traditional heart, which does not really resemble the original heart for that matter. So this is the heart. From here we have this aorta, right? Aorta, then further it divides into arteries, then further it divides into arterioles, and then it goes on to divide to become the capillaries, right? Capillaries. Now multiple capillaries join together to form the venules, right? And then further it goes to form the vein, and further it will go on to form the vena cava, or maybe IVC or SVC, then it will go back to the heart. So this is something that happens normally in our body, right? Artery, which divides further to arterioles, then capillaries, then venules, vein, and then it further, unites to form the further major trunk of the vein. But when we talk about the portal system, something else happens. What happens? Artery, okay, make the artery red, so that lots of things can be made easier. Yeah. So we have this artery, right? We divides into capillaries, further division, artery, arteriole, capillaries. These capillaries again start uniting to form arteriole, right? आर्टरी से आर्टरी ही में वो फर्दर चैनलाइज हो रहा है, right? Traditionally, generally, normally in our body, artery will eventually divide into capillaries, which will unite to form venules. But here what is happening, that artery is dividing into capillaries, and these capillaries are uniting to form arteriole and further an artery. So artery से artery ही बन जा रहा है. This is what we call a portal system, and this is what is happening here. So coming back to this point, that there is a portal system working, which is delivering the secretion, inhibitory and releasing hormones from the hypothalamus to the anterior part of pituitary. I think this has been made very much clear, which will govern the functioning of pituitary gland. Now there is another thing called the posterior pituitary, right, which is called neurohypophysis. Hypophysis is basically for pituitary. So this neurohypophysis, this part here, certain nerve cells, these are the neurosecretory cells arising from the hypothalamus, will be directly coming and invading the posterior part of this pituitary. And a very important thing to remember is that there are two parts, right? One is called supraoptic part and another is called paraventricular part. So in these two parts, two hormones. In supraoptic, ADH or vasopressin hormone is produced, and in paraventricular part, this oxytocin is produced. And mind you what I'm saying, please listen to this very carefully, that These hormones are produced in the hypothalamus and they are stored in the posterior pituitary, also called neurohypophysis. So I think till now things are very much clear. So we talked about the anatomy, basic anatomy of the hypothalamus and certain connections between the hypothalamus and pituitary. So now, like I said, there is one which is called inhibitory hormone and another which is called releasing hormone, right? So the very important examples that are given in NCERT that we have to keep in mind, right? So one is called growth hormone inhibitory hormone, GHIH, growth hormone inhibitory hormone, also called as somatostatin. Somato is growth, somatic is related to bodily parts, or which is not germ is somatic, right? So static, which will stop the growth of somatic cells. So somatostatin. In comparison to that, there is growth hormone, releasing hormone, and there is one thing called prolactin inhibiting hormone, right? Then we have okay, so these are the important things that we have to keep in mind. Also note, like the one which I said, this you should be keeping it as a note, that ADH and oxytocin are produced in the hypothalamus and stored in the pituitary, right? So now coming to the next gland, very important, because lots of hormones are secreted from this gland. It is called the master gland, right? And the name of this gland is of course pituitary, right? It is the master gland because so many hormones are secreted, and all these hormones have different sites to work in our body, and they control a vast array of functions in our body. Different cells are controlled by it, lots of things, right? So तो उसको अपन एक कंपाइल्ड फॉर्म में पढ़ने की कोशिश करेंगे. So it is lying in the sella turcica of the sphenoid bone, a line that you have to remember by heart. When you will go to the medical college, you will get to see the sella turcica of the sphenoid bone. Right now, just keep that in mind, that it is present in the sella turcica of the sphenoid bone. Coming to its parts, like I discussed, it is divided into anterior and posterior part. Anterior part, posterior part. You know, in anterior part there is a portal system, hypophyseal portal system, in which the inhibitory and releasing hormone from the hypothalamus will come, right? And then we have this posterior part, right? पीछे का part है जिसको कि हम न्यूरोहाइपोफाइसिस कहते हैं. न्यूरोहाइपोफाइसिस किस लिए कहते हैं? क्योंकि वो एक्टोडर्मल ओरिजिन का है, राइट? और वहां पे जो है दो हमने जगह देखा था, सुप्रा ऑप्टिक एंड पैरावेंट्रिकुलर न्यूक्लियाई से रिलीज होते हैं दो हॉर्मोन्स, जो हमने कहा था ऑक्सीटोसिन एंड एडीएच, राइट? सो दिस सो फार वी नो. लेट अस कम टू द एंटीरियर पार्ट. This anterior part, its origin is from endoderm reticulus pouch, right? On the upper aspect of our, buccal cavity, a pouch invaginates, and then it forms the anterior part of the pituitary, and it is also called adenohypophysis. Adenohypophysis, to remember it, I can say there is something called adenocarcinoma, which is the cancer of the glands. So this part will be having lots of glands, right? So now this part is also divided into two parts. The one is called pars distalis. Distalis is दूर वाला, and pars intermedia. Intermedia means दो पार्ट के बीच में वो दबा हुआ है. And this pars intermedia in we mammals, it is not really that developed. So it is like squeezed between the आगे वाला part and the पीछे वाला part. And right now I'm telling you that the पीछे वाला part, the the anterior pituitary, the anterior pituitary is divided into two parts, right? Now this thing you must remember by heart, all the hormones secreted by the pars distalis or dur wala, right? So in this, the hormones that you have to, growth hormone, right? Growth hormone will be released by it. Prolactin will be released by it, right? ACTH, LH, FSH and TSH. Growth, GH stands for growth hormone, prolactin, adrenocorticotropic hormone, luteinizing hormone, follicle stimulating hormone and thyroid stimulating hormone. And from the pars intermedia, there is just one hormone which is released, that is called melanocyte stimulating hormone. If you have heard about this word, it is related to melanin, which will be responsible for the color of our skin, right? So this hormone has something to do with the color of our skin, that will get us some idea about it in a bit. Now, talking about the posterior pituitary, remember it that the posterior pituitary does not secrete any hormone, कोई hormone produce नहीं करता है, ठीक है? Now this, like I said, this is called neurohypophysis, and it is a very smaller part of the pituitary, somewhat about 25%. No hormone, there is only storage of two hormone, the name that I said ADH, that is called एंटी डायूरेटिक हार्मोन. इसी से नाम से ही पता चलता है, एंटी अगेंस्ट डायूरेसिस. डायूरेसिस मतलब यूरिन निकलने का प्रोसेस, हार्मोन. तो ऐसा हार्मोन जो कि हमारे बॉडी से यूरिन निकलना कम करवाएगा, राइट? सो एंटी डायूरेटिक हार्मोन, इसको दूसरा नाम बोलते हैं वैसोप्रेसिन, राइट? वैसोप्रेसिन मतलब कि ब्लड वेसल्स को कंप्रेस करेगा. तो दो फंक्शंस होते हैं इसके, कि एक तो ये हमारे बॉडी से वाटर लॉस को जो है प्रिवेंट करता है बाय एंटी डायूरेटिक एक्शन ऑफ दिस हार्मोन, एंड ऑल्सो इट कंप्रेसेस द ब्लड वेसल्स. सो ऐसे कंडीशन में जब बॉडी में फ्लूइड की कमी हो रही है, दिस हार्मोन गेट्स एक्टिवेटेड, एंड व्हेन इट्स गेट एक्टिवेटेड, there will be less passage of urine and the blood vessels will be compressed. When the blood vessels are compressed, so there will be maintenance of this blood pressure. There are lots of ways for that. We are not going into the depth of that, right? So ADH. Now the question arises, from which part it absorbs the water? So from distal collecting tubule and collecting duct, right? Now there is a disease related to the decrement in the ADH. Like I said that ADH is responsible for absorption of water, right? जब ADH बढ़ेगा तो वाटर एब्जॉर्प्शन भी बढ़ेगा, ठीक है, जिससे कि यूरिन आना कम हो जाएगा और वाटर का कंजर्वेशन हो जाएगा. तो जस्ट इसका उल्टा कर देते हैं कि एक कंडीशन जिसमें कि ADH की कमी हो जाती है, विच इज कॉल्ड डायबिटीज इंसिपिडस, राइट? काइंड ऑफ डायबिटीज, जिसमें कि क्या होता है, देखो, वाटर का एब्जॉर्प्शन, उल्टा एरो, कम हो जाएगा, बहुत सारा पानी निकलेगा, राइट? यूरिन जो है वो बहुत सारा रिलीज होगा. तो ऐसे इंसान में जो है, इवन दो he will keep on drinking water, he will be thirsty and he will be passing out a very large volume of urine. जब यूरिन बहुत सारा शरीर से निकलना शुरू हो जाता है तो और भी बहुत सारी चीजें हो सकती है, कंसंट्रेशन हो सकता है, इलेक्ट्रोलाइट्स इम्बैलेंस हो सकती हैं, और उससे बहुत सारी प्रॉब्लम्स क्रिएट होती हैं. सो दिस इज व्हाट वी कॉल डायबिटीज इंसिपिडस. जस्ट नो द फंक्शन ऑफ दैट हार्मोन, एंड when a deficiency is said, simply reduce the concentration and it will start acting like, अब वो है नहीं तो वो सारी चीजें फंक्शन उसकी उल्टी हो जाएंगी, ठीक है? So this is how it works. Now there is another hormone called oxytocin. So oxytocin को जो है, अगर आप लोगों ने, आज के टाइम पे क्या होता है ना, हर इंसान को ताज़ा दूध चाहिए. So often people would call this दूध वाला at their homes, गाय लेके आओ और दूध निकाल के दो, ठीक है? अब दिस इज नॉट समथिंग नेचुरल, राइट? सो काउ का जब काफ होता है, वो मदर के पास जाता है, मिल्क की सकलिंग करता है, उस टाइम पे मिल्क रिलीज होता है. इट इज अ नेचुरल फिजियोलॉजिकल प्रोसेस जिसमें कि ऑक्सीटोसिन रिलीज होता है मदर के बॉडी से, है ना? वो ऑक्सीटोसिन का फंक्शन क्या होता है? इट्स फंक्शन इज टू इजेक्ट द मिल्क. मिल्क इजेक्शन हार्मोन इज व्हाट वी कॉल फॉर ऑक्सीटोसिन. अब जो गाय वाले होते हैं, उनको अपना मार्केट सही रखना है, सारी चीजें, तो उसमें क्या करते हैं, दे ऑफन वुड कैरी दिस इंजेक्शन ऑफ ऑक्सीटोसिन, ठीक है? और वो आपके घर पहुंचने से पहले उस गाय को ऑक्सीटोसिन का इंजेक्शन लगा देते. और अब वो उसका बच्चा नहीं है, बच्चे को तो शायद उसने सेल कर दिया होगा कहीं. अब वो ताजा दूध निकाल के देने के चक्कर में मदर को ऑक्सीटोसिन का इंजेक्शन लगाता है, और जब इंजेक्शन लगाता है तो मदर का मिल्क इजेक्शन शुरू हो जाता है, ठीक है? और वो वहां पे दूध निकाल के दे देता है. सिमिलर गोज विद ह्यूमन बीइंग्स. इसका एक काम तो है कि मिल्क इजेक्शन हार्मोन। दूसरा, जब प्रेगनेंसी के टाइम पे पार्चुरेशन का टाइम आता है, जब बेबी को बॉडी से बाहर निकालने का प्रोसेस शुरू होता है, उस टाइम पे द मेजर हार्मोन दैट comes into play is oxytocin. It works on the muscular cells of the uterus, right? Myometrium layer of the uterus, where it starts very vigorous contraction, right? Thereby pushing the baby out from the mother. So often के ऐसे cases में mother का जब baby वो पूरे proper contraction नहीं आते, often the mother is given an injection of oxytocin so that a proper contraction can be generated and the baby can be brought out easily, right? So these are the function of oxytocin, right? Now coming to the next part, so far we have studied about the posterior pituitary hormones. Now let us come to the hormones of anterior pituitary, right? So we have these lactotropes. Lactotropes, of course, you are understanding what its function will be related to lactation, right? Milk formation. For this, the prolactin releasing hormone will be coming from hypothalamus. It will work on lactotropes and it will produce prolactin, which will help in the formation of milk. Similarly, corticotropes, right? Corticotropes. Now see, this is a very important thing to learn here, that on the corticotropes, both melanocyte, right, melanocyte hormone releasing hormone and corticotropin releasing hormone, these both are coming from hypothalamus, right? Hypothalamus work on the corticotrope, and when the corticotropes are stimulated, it releases melanocyte stimulating hormone, which will produce melanin, which will cause darkening of skin, right? And along with that, it will also release ACTH, adrenocorticotropic releasing hormone, that adrenal gland, right? Do you remember that gland? So there will be certain part over the adrenal gland, which is the cortex. Here certain hormone will be present, that is called glucocorticoid, which will be involved in the maintenance of blood glucose level as well, right? So this is the function. And once I have told you these things, when we will come to this part, I'll tell you about certain diseases where there is a disorder in the adrenal gland, and as a result of which this melanocyte hormones are increasing and causing this increased pigmentation of the skin on the person, right? So this is the benefit when you understand the functioning of the correlation between different glands, when you can think about the physical manifestation that will come along with it, right? So now we have this thyrotrope, of course, TSH releasing hormone from the hypothalamus will work here on the thyrotropes, which will release TSH, and TSH will work on the thyroid gland, thereby producing T3 and T4, the thyroid hormones, right? Then we have this GnRH, which will work on the gonadotrope, which will release LH and FSH, right? FSH, as we know, follicular stimulating hormone, it will stimulate the follicles to get matured, right? Similarly, LH in female, it causes ovulation, while in male, it will help in the formation of testosterone. Further, this testosterone helps in spermatogenesis. So these two hormones, LH and FSH, are called gonadotropins because they are working at the level of gonads, and it will help in enhancing the functions of gonads, thereby the starting or maintaining the reproductive cycle in a human being, right? Now we have these somatotropes, right? Somatotrope related to growth hormone, right? Somatotropes will release growth hormone, and then a few lines are given about the functioning of growth hormone, not going much into the depths of it. So we know that somatotropes really have growth hormone, and once this growth hormone gets started releasing in the body, what it will be doing, it is a diabetogenic hormone, which means there is only one hormone, right? Insulin, which will be decreasing the blood glucose level, and this insulin is so powerful that there are so many hormones, right? So on one side there is insulin, right, insulin, which will decrease the blood glucose level, right? To counter this insulin, we have this growth hormone. Like I said, we have this glucocorticoids, right? Glucocorticoids, we have this catecholamines, right? We have this thyroid hormone. All these hormones, right? All these hormones are trying to balance, right? Balance out the function of insulin, and hence they are called diabetogenic hormones. Sorry, in place of thyroid, I'll tell you the exact names of all the hormones here, I think. Yeah, diabetogenic hormones, right? In catecholamines, we have adrenaline and noradrenaline, right? Maybe dopamine. All these hormones are trying to counteract the function of insulin, right? So this is about the growth hormone. It increases the blood glucose level, and you can just to give you an idea how you can understand this. So during puberty, right? Puberty is the phase of life where there is rapid growth because of very higher amount of growth hormone. तो जब कोई लड़का होता है, वो उसकी हाइट लंबी हो रही होती है, बड़ा हो रहा होता है, वो तो बड़ा पतला सा होता है, राइट? पतला सा होता है. You will never see generally the boy who or the girl who is in puberty to be very fat until and unless he's not having some kind of obesity or maybe any disease. बट जनरली क्या होता है कि वो बच्चा पतला होता है. कहते हैं ना, जब लंबा हो रहा है तो पतला हो रहा है. तो बिकॉज when there is excess of growth hormone, it does lipolysis for the generation of energy. मतलब क्या है कि ये लिपिड को, बॉडी में जो फैट है उसको यूज करेगा आप बॉडी को एनर्जी देने के लिए. तो उस टाइम पे कार्डियो करने की जरूरत नहीं, वो नेचुरली पतला होने वाला है, ठीक है? और क्या करवाता है ये? तो जीआईटी से, गैस्ट्रोइंटेस्टाइनल ट्रैक्ट से कैल्शियम का एब्जॉर्प्शन बढ़वाता है, ताकि उस कैल्शियम को वो बोन्स के पास ले जा सके और बोन के ग्रोथ को हेल्प कर सके, ठीक है? ऑल्सो प्रोटीन जो होता है, प्रोटीन की बॉडी में स्टोरेज को बढ़ाता है. फाइन. नाउ रिलेटेड टू द डिजीजेस विद रिस्पेक्ट टू द ग्रोथ हार्मोन, राइट? सो अगर ग्रोथ हार्मोन बढ़ गया है शरीर में और वो बढ़ा है किसी बच्चे में, राइट, सिंस चाइल्डहुड और सिंस बर्थ, then it is called gigantism, right? It is called gigantism. और अगर एडोलिसेंट इंसान में ग्रोथ हार्मोन बढ़ गया है, राइट? एडोलिसेंट इंसान में ग्रोथ हार्मोन मे बी ड्यू टू अ पिट्यूटरी एडिनोमा, पिट्यूटरी ट्यूमर, राइट? उसमें सडनली ग्रोथ हार्मोन का सिक्रीशन बहुत बढ़ गया है, देन वी विल कॉल इट एक्रोमेगैली. एक्रोमेगैली जब बोलूं तो यू कैन थिंक अबाउट खली, राइट? उसके जॉ बहुत बड़े हो जाते हैं, आवाज बहुत डीप हो जाती है, बोन्स बहुत स्ट्रॉन्ग स्ट्रेंथ वाले हो जाते हैं, ये सारी चीजें होती हैं. बट अलॉन्ग विद दैट लॉट्स ऑफ प्रॉब्लम कम्स, और दिस कैन कॉज अ लॉट ऑफ प्रॉब्लम फॉर दैट पर्सन. जैसे खली ने भी अपना शायद पिट्यूटरी ग्लैंड में उसके भी ट्यूमर था, उसने उसका ऑपरेशन भी करवाया, ठीक है? और अगर इसकी कमी हो देन इट इज कॉल्ड ड्वार्फिज्म. माइंड यू, ग्रोथ हार्मोन की कमी के वजह से जो इंसान छोटा होता है, दे आर कॉल्ड सर्कस मिजेट्स, राइट? बट दे आर इंटेलेक्चुअली, मेंटली दे आर वेरी साउंड. तो ये एक हो गए. और दूसरा जो होता है वो दूसरे हॉर्मोन्स में भी थायराइड की कमी के वजह से भी इंसान की हाइट छोटी हो सकती है, क्रिटिनिज्म जो होता है, राइट? और उनका फिजिकल एज वेल एज मेंटल स्टेटस जो होता है दोनों ही कम होता है, राइट? So far we have studied this. Now let us come to the pineal gland, the third eye, right? So pineal gland, जैसा मैंने बताया कि डिस्टल साइड ऑफ द फोर ब्रेन में प्रेजेंट होता है. फोर ब्रेन के डिस्टल साइड जस्ट इस दोनों के बीच में पीछे को होता है ना? आप नेट पे में भी सर्च करके एक एटलस में देख सकते हो कहां पे उसकी लोकेशन होती है. इट सिक्रीट्स मेलाटोनिन, राइट? देयर वाज वन पास इंटरमीडिया व्हिच वाज सिक्रीटिंग मेलानिन, right, which was responsible for the melanin production, the skin color. This is melatonin, right? melatonin है ये. और melatonin जो होता है ये हमारे स्लीप वेक साइकिल को मेंटेन करने के लिए इंपॉर्टेंट होता है. जब रात होती है जनरली क्या जो इवोल्यूशनरी टर्म्स में कह लो या जैसे भी कह लो, तो सूर्य के अस्त हो जाने के बाद, सनसेट हो जाने के बाद रात हो जाती थी, और हमारे जो सिस्टम है, आईज हैं, वो लाइट को परसीव नहीं कर पाती थी. सो द मोमेंट light used to get reduced, melatonin secretion used to increase. It happens today as well. I'll tell you कि मेलाटोनिन का सिक्रीशन बढ़ता था ब्लड में, और जैसे ही मेलाटोनिन का सिक्रीशन बढ़ता था इंसान को नींद आ जाती थी, तो इंसान सो जाता था. सुबह जैसे ही धूप सनराइज हुआ तो मेलाटोनिन का कंसंट्रेशन फॉल करता था, इंसान जग जाता था. बट आज के टाइम पे क्या करते हैं कि वी हैव लॉट्स ऑफ आर्टिफिशियल लाइट्स, एंड जब बेड पे जाते हैं तो एक सन को अपने मुंह के सामने रख लेते हैं, दैट इज योर फोन. तो उसके वजह से हमने एक नेचुरली काम करने वाले चीज को हमने हैम्पर करने की कोशिश की है. फोन चलाते रहते हैं सामने रख के, जिससे कि मेलाटोनिन का कंसंट्रेशन जो बढ़ना चाहिए था उस लेवल का बढ़ता नहीं है. एंड लॉट्स ऑफ पीपल, सो मेनी पीपल हु आर यूजिंग फोन लेट इन द नाइट बिफोर स्लीप, दे टेंड टू सफर फ्रॉम इंसोम्निया. उसको रात में नींद नहीं आती है ना. तो ये चीज एक नेचुरल जो फेनोमिना था उसको अब हम हैम्पर कर रहे हैं, जिससे हमारी लाइफस्टाइल खराब हो रही है. सो दिस इज मोस्ट इंपॉर्टेंट फंक्शन ऑफ मेलाटोनिन which maintains the diurnal or sleep wake rhythm or the cycle, right? Other thing that it can maintain is body temperature, metabolism, pigmentation also, menstruation, and defense system in our body. So this is all about your pineal gland and pituitary as well as hypothalamus gland. So in the next section we'll be talking about other endocrine organs like the thyroid, parathyroid and so on. So इसको जो भी मैंने प्रॉपरली नोट्स प्रिपेयर किए हैं, यू कैन सिंपली राइट दिस नोट्स डाउन, और वो सारे नोट्स जो प्रिपेयर्ड हैं वो बिल्कुल एनसीईआरटी से निकाल के और थोड़ा बहुत मैंने ऐड किया, सो दैट यू कैन हैव सम orientation about what NCERT is trying to tell you. Or once you are done with these videos, you can simply read your NCERT and most of the things will get cleared. Okay, thank you.